Hello everybody, this is Femi here from Femi Diaries. Man, what series do I have planned for you guys? It's going to be great. Before I go on, if you haven't subscribed yet to Femi Diaries, I want you to take a moment and subscribe to Femi Diaries. It's an upcoming channel, but I promise with these episodes that are coming up, man, fighting to win. There's nothing I'm more passionate about than us getting to a place in our lives where we actually win the battles of life. The battles of life are not just on the outside. Some of the battles we face are on the inside. It's looking at us right here, the me, the you. Things to do with us, our personalities, things to do with how we deal with crisis, how we deal with stress, how we deal with our problems. You know, all these issues, these are things we're going to delve into in this series. Part of it also, I'm going to be sharing a lot about myself also, trying to kind of help others out there to know that, hey, there's nobody that has it all together. We're all people who are trying to get better. None of us is perfect. None of us have all the answers. But the goal with this series is really to help and to add value to your life, to add value to my life, and just to share and have a conversation on winning. Winning is very important. At the end of our struggles, at the end of the things we've all gone through in our lives, we want to look back and be able to say, I triumphed. I'm victorious. I won this battle. That's what this series is all about. Helping us to get to a place in our lives where we really, truly are at peace with ourselves. Not meaning that we don't have any more problems, but we have got to a place where we look at our problems from the top and we know that we have the right attitude, we have the right perspective and perception about our problems and about our difficulties. That's what this series is about. Fighting to win. I want you guys to be tuned in. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be shooting in different places. I'm going to be all around the place. You guys stay tuned. It's going to be awesome. Peace. So we're talking about fighting to win. Now let's kind of define fighting itself. You know, when you talk about fighting, you're talking about an opposition. Something is coming against you. And that's really what it means to fight. And, you know, the fascinating thing about it is that as humans, the moment we came into this world, we already had an opponent. Now, I know everybody doesn't believe in the Bible, but the Bible story tells us about Adam and Eve, the first man and the first woman. And we were told that they were in that garden where God put them. And as they were there was a snake that was there also. And that snake, we found out later, was going to be Lucifer or Satan, the enemy. And he tricked Eve and made her do the wrong things. And basically what happened was man now became an enemy of God, or man sinned against God. And that was the beginning of the fall of man, and things have not been the same ever since then. And you know, that was the beginnings, that's creation, that's how things all started. So when we talk about fighting and fighting to win, already here from the beginning we are already presented with the first enemy of man. And it's not a physical enemy. And ever since then, if you go through the things the Bible tells us about, there has been an increase of evil, an increase of things coming against mankind, an increase of opponents to anything that is good for man. And you know, the thing that really gets me about that whole part of what gets me about the creation story is that there had to have been something valuable that Satan wanted to get from man. There had to have been something he wanted that made him go to the extent he went to make the first man and the first woman fail. There was something he saw. And you know, part of what he saw was he saw the beauty, the value, the greatness, the authority, everything good that God had given mankind. And he wanted that for himself. He had that before, but he lost it. And because of that, he made man fall. And ever since man fell, so the enemy definitely has seen that there are some things of value that mankind has, that he wants for himself. And that's really the purpose for the external part of the fight. You are valuable, you are important to God, you have meaning, you have purpose. He gave us everything He is. God gave us everything He is. And that was the reason why that snake came after the first man and the first woman. And ever since then, there has been conflict. Ever since then, there has been opposition. And mankind has had to fight for any good thing mankind is going to have. You know, if you look down right after then, we see the first man, and then we see his kids come on the scene, and one of the brothers killed his brother, and evil just kept multiplying. Things kept going wrong. You know, we saw the introduction of fear, of sickness, of disease. Later on, as things went on, incest came into the picture, child sacrifice, all kinds of things. Things just went wrong. By Genesis 6, everything was crazy. It says God repented that He made man. He felt like destroying everything because that wasn't His plan in the beginning, to make the man become evil. That wasn't His plan. So, you know, when I talk about fighting to win, a part of it has to do with the fight on the outside. Things that have come against mankind to steal our dignity, to steal our value, to steal the meaning for our lives, to steal our authority, our dominion, everything good that we got from God, our beauty, you know, our essence. All that has come against us to try and steal those things from us. These are part of the things we have to fight for to get back. And, you know, the fight is really real. It's a real fight. And, you know, I just wanted to ask, what's your fight? What's your fight? Now, we're talking about the external part of the fight now, because there's also an internal part of the fight, which really has to do with you as an individual. Man is spirit, soul, and body. So we have our body. Our body is like a system, and our body has a voice, if I should use that word, and it craves things. It craves certain kind of things. It wants certain kind of things, and that could become a fight. For example, you know what you're doing is going to maybe lead to you losing your family, or losing your loved ones, or losing something very precious to you, and you keep doing it. Obviously, that's an enemy that you will have to confront and overcome. So that's going to be a fight you will have to have. You know, that we could go down addictions, we could go down, you know, suicidal tendencies, we could go down a plethora of different things that are things that we can conflict or come against us, that we'll have to fight and win those fights for us to really have victory and to be able to look back and, you know that we actually got to a place where we have peace. So in this introduction, you know, I'm just really kind of trying to lay a foundation for what we're going to be doing in this series as we keep going. The fight to win. The fight to win over whatever circumstances, whatever situation, whatever things that have come against us. We know the things in our lives that we have to overcome. We know things in our lives that if we don't do something about, we know if we don't do something about it, we're going to go down a dark tunnel that will not really be good for our lives. And, I just wanted to kind of bring that out and present that to us. So the fight is real. And I asked, what's your fight? I want you to kind of begin to identify the fights. So we have a fight on the outside, a spirit being called Lucifer that is out there loose in the world. And there's nobody that will tell me they don't know that, that there is some kind of evil forces. There are good forces, God, and there are evil forces. And part of our fight is to get to a place where we use the authority we got from God in the beginning against this spiritual being called Lucifer, and back him up so that we can be able to do the things we are supposed to do in our lives. That's part of the fight. That's part of winning the fight, that we get to a place where on the outside we deal with the oppositions on the outside. Now, it's not just Lucifer. I mean, he himself has created all the systems we have in the world today. Our government, he has, or should I say, he has influenced our systems. He has influenced, you can name it, whether it's technology, whether it's education, whether it's politics, whether it's business, you know, even in the religious circles, he has influenced. And really, down history, we've seen so much that has happened, and he has had a lot of influence over people and over countries and over leaders and over leadership and over, you know, the systems that make up, you know, the state of our being. And when we talk about enemies that we need to overcome, when we talk about being able to fight to win, these are some of the things we're going to have to come up against. And I also talked about the enemy on the other side, which is the enemy that you have to deal with within you. Many of those things really took hold. I'm talking about the enemy on the inside. A lot of the issues that have resulted from the enemy on the inside really begin from childhood. There are a lot of childhood issues and childhood traumas and childhood difficulties that a lot of us are still wrestling with, and a lot of people still have to, what I call, fight to win. A lot of people today are not in relationships, are not able to do certain things because of things that have happened in the past from childhood. And not just childhood, developing years, young adulthood, and so many, the rite of passage that people have had. People have had to fight through different things to get to where they are now. And one of the things I realized is that we have the power of choice. You see, that's one of the things that God gave us in the beginning. See, it was easy. He could have just stopped Adam and Eve from doing what they were doing. He could have even just made them robots and controlled them, controlled their decisions, controlled everything they did. But he didn't do that. He gave us choice. We are free moral agents. We can choose what we do. And I think in a way, the power of choice has also become, I think, man's greatest dilemma. Because even though we have choice, many times, because we've been, many people have had different circumstances come against them, and they are not able to make the kind of choices they're supposed to. Some people need to be guided. Some people need to be helped and, really, really mentored to really be able to get to a good place or a healthy place in their core, so that they can make the kind of decisions and choices they are supposed to make. And that's kind of part of what this series is all about, to hopefully give us some tools, hopefully give us some things that can help us, so that in bid of and in our desire to make better choices in our lives. And none of us is perfect. We are all going through different things. We've all had to go through different things. And some of us have overcome. Some of us still have issues we are dealing with in our lives. And we just want to get to a place of peace, and a place where we're really making the kind of progress we're supposed to. And hopefully through the resources that we're going to be sharing as we go on in this series called Fight to Win, we will find some solace, we will find some peace, we will find some practical things that we can use. We will find some things that will help us to take certain steps that might be uncomfortable, but that are necessary for us to get to a place of wholeness, a place of good health, a place of peace in our lives, a place of wholeness. When you've healed from certain events and circumstances, you have healed from difficulties in your life, it's obvious, because the same things that made you feel negative and the same things that gave you a wrong vibe, you go through those same things, and now they don't affect you the same way anymore. That's the way you really know that you have overcome. When you know you have fought a battle and you have won that battle, when the issues that made certain circumstances make you react in certain ways, when those issues come up again, you don't react the same way anymore. Kind of giving an example of what I'm trying to talk about. There was a time in my life, for example, when I was really rebellious against authority. And part of it was just not having had that principal figure in my life, my dad, to really kind of guide me and help me with a lot of things. And, at that time, I was very rebellious. I didn't want to listen to authority. But part of that, as I grew and as I began to understand, I realized that authority is not a bad thing. Being submissive being in a position where you allow authority figures. I want authority figures in my life because none of us have it all together. No, if we are the all in all in our lives, there's definitely going to be some problem somewhere along the line. We're going to make decisions, we're going to do things and get ourselves in trouble. So, learning to get to a place where I was more comfortable with authority figures, whether it's the police, whether it's a mentor figure, whether it's a boss at work, maybe it's, mother, father, uncles. It took a process, but I began to understand, and I began to really align myself to really be in a position where I allowed authority figures in my life. And in my next clip, I'm going to kind of share a little bit more about some of my beginnings as we begin to develop this whole episode and series on Fighting to Win. Again, like I said, my desire at the end of the day is that something or some things will be said that will really be a blessing, will really help you in your journey, for you to make the kind of decisions and choices that will really help you to have a better outlook on life and, really be able to gain some ground and make some good progress in some areas where maybe you might be struggling or you may not have had solutions. That's kind of my heart. So we're going to pick it up in the next session, and we'll keep building from there as we develop this series called Fight to Win. So it's very interesting, kind of trying to reminisce and think about all the different things that have happened that have led to this place and to this point in time. And that's kind of part of what I'm just going to be sharing this episode on the fight to win. Growing up as a little young boy in Lagos, we used to call it Las Giddy. And from a middle class family, my dad was trained to be a surgeon, but he ended up just being a doctor. We talk about race issues here in the United States, but some of those issues have been going on for a long time. But, he went to Trinity College, was trying to be a surgeon, and ended up being a doctor. And, my family was really close-knit. We had good times. I remember so many good memories in the past. But, the thing about life I realized a lot of times is that even before we were born, that we were already involved in a fight. Even before we were born. And that's kind of the funny thing about life many times. Our families, our whole life, many times there is some parts of it that is under conflict, it's under dysfunction. And we get put into that mix. And a lot of us would never know what to do because it wasn't things we knew about. One of my own first conflicts was my dad actually had been married before he met my mom. And I have two stepsisters, awesome. I love them to death. But that was already a conflict for me. I remember people telling me back then that your mom is so young. How could she be the mother of your two older sisters? And I didn't get it because my dad never talked about stuff like that. He never talked about maybe, But as I grew older, I eventually kind of found out and understood that, that I had these stepsisters, and obviously that means that my dad must have been married before then. And that brought some conflict definitely into my life. Another thing was my dad's passing very early. My dad passed very early. I was not quite 10 years old when my dad passed. These were some of the scars or the first things that happened that, brought dysfunction and, pain and hurt. And I think one of the things I did back then was I kept a lot of these things very privately. I kept it quiet. Even though, in the family with cousins and aunts and nephews and all that, we got along well. But I realized that there were conflict situations that began already through some of those circumstances. The other thing again was my high school was a boarding school. I went to a boarding school, and back then, those boarding schools, man, there were all kinds of stuff that happened in the boys' hostel or the boys' dormitory or boarding place. The bigger boys obviously took advantage of the younger boys. They beat us up a lot, victimized us in so many ways. And all these different things definitely played roles and played, a part in kind of scarring me in the beginning. And went to college too. There was certain things that happened. I was involved with this group we called, I forgot what we called ourselves back then, but it was a group of about 10 boys, and we would walk around, and that was the days of NWA, and we thought we were cool. We had our our baseball caps and everything. We were trying to be like Easy and Dr. Dre and everything else. It was a lot of fun, but we got ourselves in trouble a lot of times. I remember one time they almost jumped some of us because we were being smart. But all these different scenarios I've talked about were some of the beginnings for me, and beginning to grow older, becoming a young man, I realized that some of these things had created different things in my life. We all have struggled with rejection. I have rejection, sometimes rebellion, pride, anger. A lot of us as men, we struggle with anger a lot of times, and we don't even know why we're angry. And coming to grow up a little bit more, you realize that some of the anger comes from different frustrations of things that have happened in the past. And when I begin to talk about fights to win, my journey has been a journey where I've had to learn how to come up above and to win a lot of these fights. Like I said, so many of these different things, the few I've mentioned so far, definitely did some damage to my soul. But you see, that's one of the things about life. Even when we don't plan for certain things to happen, I've heard of people who have been raped as babies, young kids, incest, and all kinds of things. Some of us, we've gone through different kind of death, people dying, different kind of difficult circumstances that have affected and scarred us in different ways. But the good thing about life is that there is always hope to win if we can find out and figure out the way we're going to go from there to win. I remember back then they would tell us about Jesus, about being positive, giving your life to Christ. As a young guy, you take these things for granted. You play about them. You don't take them very seriously. But growing up and being a young man, I began to realize that, there's a lot to the reality of being, a child of God. Even though I wasn't really committed to God at those times, my mom tried her best. She prayed for me a whole lot. My mom prayed and prayed and prayed, trying to get me on board. And I still remember telling her things like, Mommy, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying is true, but I'm not ready right now. We went to the parties and all those things. We thought we were having a great time. We did have a great time. But then at the end of the day, some of those things also, they had their own conflicts that they caused in my life. And, sharing some of my own story and knowing fully well that I love you out there, have your own stories also. And the theme or the key thing I'm trying to say through all what I've said so far is just the fact that even before we got here, there has been conflict. You see, if you know anything about the Bible had told us about how Adam and Eve were in a garden, a beautiful place, an awesome place. And being there, already there was an enemy that had been set in that place where they were. And that enemy came against them, and he led to the whole scenario with man falling and man getting into a situation where he sinned against God. So there was already conflict from the beginning. And this is our beginnings, even as humans. that from the beginning there has always been an enemy on the outside. But you know, the funny thing about it is that there's also an enemy on the inside. Because, like I said, some of the situations we go through in life, our reactions to them, our processing of these events, how we see those events, the outlook, how we look at them, they create certain behaviors, they create certain actions, they create certain reactions from us that sometimes may not be healthy. And just like any other person, you know, there were times I rebelled in my life. There were times I felt, you know, that life was unfair. Why did my dad have to die early? All those kind of things. We all have these things in our lives where we feel life has taken something from us. But you know, the key thing, the first thing I'm really trying to say to us today is that many times, if we understand that conflict has been out here in the world from the beginning, that's why I talked about Adam and Eve. From the beginning, there has been conflict. From the beginning, there has been an enemy loosed on the outside. But then there's also the enemy on the inside that we have to talk about. How do we react to circumstances? Our relationships with our family, with our friends, with our loved ones. Conflicts, how do we deal with conflicts? How do we deal with crises? How do we deal with difficulties? Do we go into addictions whenever we are having a tough time? How do we manage stress? How do we manage circumstances that are difficult in our lives? These are the kind of situations that reveal to us how we have, if we have healed and if we have overcome some of our past conflicts and some of the things that have happened in our lives. I talked about the enemy on the outside, and like I said, there's also an enemy on the inside. That's the me on the inside. The me who wants to be rebellious. The me who doesn't want to listen to authority. The me who doesn't think I need to be, you know, too submissive to anybody. The me who wants to do whatever I want to do. You know, that's part of the conflict situation that happens and that we have to manage. We have to be able to manage it. And in managing it in my life, what I've seen is God has really played a major role in helping me manage a lot of the issues in my life. And in another series, I'm going to share a little bit more about some of the things that have been helpful to me in beginning to manage some of the different issues and some of the kind of things that have happened in my growing up. But in this intro session, I just wanted to share that we all have had to face different conflicts and things in life. And the stage was set even before we got here. And there have been a lot of things that have happened in all our lives that could have thrown us off or made us turn out wrong. You know, in saying that, I remember a story about two sons that were born to a guy, a man. The man ended up in jail. And as the story went, his two sons, one of his sons took after him and also ended up in jail. The other son ended up working his life. He worked through his life. He went to school. He managed the issues in his life. All the conflicts that happened, all the wrongs, all the things that his dad had passed on to him, even without his knowing. But he made up his mind never to be like his dad. Now they were both interviewed. The two sons of that man were interviewed. The one who went to jail said, "Yeah, of course I turned out like my dad. My dad was, he was a killer. It was, he was a jailbird. He was on crack cocaine. He was all this. So what else do you expect from me? I turned out just like my dad." Then the other son said that I saw my dad and I made up my mind I would never be like my dad. And I determined to go to school. I determined to beat the odds. I determined to make something good out of my life. And he pursued those things. And at the end of it all, he was a successful lawyer. And when they asked him, he said, "Yeah, when I saw my dad, I made up my mind never to be like my dad." Now, these two guys went through the same circumstances in their growth, in their upbringing, but they made different choices. One ended up deciding to just be like his dad. He threw all caution away. He lived his life. He was a free spirit, ended up in jail like his dad. The other guy on the other side made up his mind, made a choice to make something out of his life. And that's what he did. My question to you guys out there is this. You also have a choice to make. You can make something good out of your life like one of those two sons. You don't necessarily have to repeat the wrongs and repeat everything that happened from your ancestry. You can make choices to make a better decision. We're going to pick this up again because this series is going to go for a while. Hey, what's up everybody? Quick commercial. When we talk about fighting to win, we're talking about fighting for yourself. There are lots of things coming against us. You need to fight to win your personal battles. You need to fight to win your family battles. You need to fight to win for your kids, for your community, for your nation, for the world. There's so many things that we need to fight for. Even when you don't want to get into the fight, y'all, the fight is already on. And I'm talking about a fight, a positive fight, a fight that brings forth good things. That's the kind of fight we're talking about. Fight to win. Your community depends on it. Your life depends on it. Your family depends on it. Your children, they depend on you fighting for them. So much for us to fight for. Stay tuned. This series continues.